Legend has it that years ago, before any of you were born, Thaddeus and Aaron were involved in a conflict of all conflicts. It started out like any normal day. The sun rose, birds were chirping, trees were standing, clouds were in the sky, but something was different. There was energy in the air. There was a feeling that people couldn't shake, that something was about to happen. As usual, Aaron approached Thaddeus and commented on how amazing a guy he was. "Thaddeus," Aaron said, "you're an amazing guy." But that's not what Thaddeus heard. Thaddeus heard Aaron say this: "Thaddeus, I want to duel you. I want to challenge you. I want to fight." Nobody knows exactly why that's what Thaddeus heard, but that's the situation. And so Aaron drew up plans. He said, "I shall be riding a raptor. You shall be riding a unicorn. And then we shall fight." And so the fight happened. It was brutal. It was bad. And obviously Thaddeus won. But they've become best friends ever since.
Now, I'm pretty sure that we all know, Thaddeus, that if we were to duel it out, that they would probably have a different outcome than the outcome that you're trying to project into the world with this story of yours. But nevertheless, I think as we look at dueling, or as we look at fights and arguments, or being on opposite ends of an opinion, there's oftentimes people can get hurt. And in these moments, when people might be on opposing opinions or opposing sides, or maybe there's a circumstance or an event that took place where someone was hurt, there is this natural tendency for one to want to get revenge on the other. Right? As we look at the story of Joseph, where he's sold by his brothers and his brothers wanted to kill him, I mean, he had every right in the end of the story to want to take revenge out on his brothers. Yet we see something different play out, which we'll get to in a minute. It reminds me of when I was a kid, and my brother is 7 years older than me, and so he's a little bit older, and he had a paper route one day, and I was pretty young, and I just wanted to hang out with him, and so we went on this paper route together, and I'm just kind of tagging along as he's delivering the papers to each house. And there's this tree at the end of our block. It was in the front yard of someone's house, and I was so fascinated by this tree because it had these maybe 3 or 4 inch long thorns or spikes, and they covered the tree. The whole tree was covered, and there's no way you could climb it or try to play around on that tree because you would have just been stabbed by this harpoon of a thorn. And so I was fascinated by it, and I remember that day I picked one off, and I was just kind of hanging on to it, playing around with it. And for whatever reason, I still to this day have no idea why my brother did what he did, but it was towards the end of the route, and I came up to him. I don't know if I was going to say something to him, but he drop kicked me right where the sun don't shine. I mean, and it hurt. I mean, I dropped to the ground. I was crying. I mean, I was in tons of pain. But my response, my natural response, I mean, I remember real clearly being angry. Not only just being like completely filled up with pain, but anger, and I wanted revenge. And it wasn't like I had plotted this. It was this like impulsive decision where I had this thorn and I stabbed him right in the forearm. I mean, I just plunged that 3 or 4 inch long thorn right into his forearm. And then I ran home. And I remember like he got in trouble and I didn't. And I don't really know all the details of, I think my parents were just more concerned with the fact that my brother did this like horrific thing to his younger brother. And so they maybe glossed over the fact that he had a spike sticking out of his forearm, but maybe we can relate to situations and moments in our lives where the natural response is to want to get even. And even in our fun little story, like Thaddeus, like we're going to have to duel again, right? I mean, we need to clear the air as to who really won this crazy battle. But when we look at the life of Joseph, there were so many moments where he could have been plotting. He had so much time when he was in prison or in the dungeon in Egypt to plot out this crazy plan and how he could get back at his brothers. And even when he made the right decision, and we've been talking about this as we've been taking this journey through the life of Joseph, and what do we do when we don't know what to do, and this idea that God knows the big picture and we live in these small snapshots in life. And in each little snapshot, we're faced with a choice, with a decision, and how are we going to navigate this world when there's these moments in time that seem to be unpredictable or a little gray. It's not always black and white as to what we should do and how we should behave. And Joseph made these right decisions time after time after time. And even when the consequence from his right decision led to something horrific by being thrown into prison yet again. And then even in these moments where he's like helping out people and they forget about him. I mean, you look at Joseph's life and his family wanted to murder him. Instead, they sold him into slavery, and now he's a slave, and he makes right decisions, and then he kind of even earns stature in the home, but then gets thrown into prison because he's falsely accused of something, and then he's forgotten and is spending years, maybe some of the best years of his life. But then he's remembered, and God does this absolutely amazing thing, and he takes Joseph's story and he begins to unpack it so that like the world around him can be affected by the great wisdom that Joseph is providing to the people of Egypt. And so the king puts him in charge of this incredible plan to help save Egypt during this famine. And Joseph is making decisions, and he's rewarded and he's blessed for all that he's been doing. But keep in mind in this story where it's not just Egypt facing this famine, but all of the land around him, and his family is experiencing the same famine and drought that they are there in Egypt. And so they travel to Egypt because they hear word that Egypt has stored up food and now they are selling it to the people around them. And Joseph is in charge of that project. And this is that moment where Joseph has a choice. And let me read you this. I find this part of the story just absolutely fascinating, and I love this verse. And so Joseph's brothers are approaching Joseph, and kind of the table is set for them to make the exchange. And this is what Joseph says. They kind of realize, oh my gosh, this is Joseph. Oh my gosh, what are they going to do? How on earth is he in charge? I mean, can you imagine what they must have been thinking? Like, they didn't know if he was alive or dead or anything because they had sold him and he had been gone for years. And all of a sudden, they show up just wanting some food, and they see their little brother in charge of this powerful, powerful kingdom. And Joseph says this. In chapter 50 of Genesis, verse 19, Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." And that could have been the moment that Joseph took revenge out on his brothers, but he says, am I not right where God wanted me all along? And right now, in this time, he's allowing me to experience life and to make choices and to influence the world around me so that many lives would be saved. So you meant harm, but God has been a part of the journey all along. So here's my hope today, that as we look at the life of Joseph, and we see that there were so many moments along the way where he had opportunity to make the wrong choice. And as we look at the time-lapse video of that drawing, and in the beginning we had no idea what that drawing was going to look like, but that artist knew. The artist had this idea of what the picture could eventually look like. And we were taken on this journey along the way. And it's the same is true for each and every one of us, that we are all artists, and we are crafting and creating our life. And will we be a people that would bring peace into the world? We're not seeking revenge or vengeance or to get back or to win an argument or to be on top and be the winner, but that we would be a people that could bring peace. Knowing that God knows the big picture and that He has our back along the way. So what might it look like for you and for me to take a minute and to ask ourselves the question, what life am I creating? And what would it look like for me to really be a peacemaker? Hey, thanks so much for tuning in this week. We hope that it's rich conversation. And don't forget, starting next Sunday, we are launching our new series called Last Words, where we will hear from seniors and 8th graders about their experience going through middle school and high school, and they have some words of wisdom to share with us all. So tune in next week as well. We'll see you later.